rehabilitated, and real entertaining. This is the Carl Jackson Podcast.
Welcome to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Please be sure to subscribe to the podcast everywhere podcasts are found: Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble. We really do appreciate you following us. It really does help a lot. Also, wherever I am on social media, The Carl Jackson Show. And I want to tell you about my friends at MyPillow. MyPillow.com is offering an amazing deal. If you use my promo code, the promo code Carl, you can click on the radio listener square at MyPillow.com or give them a call at 1-800-858-0263. But anyway, the deal that they have, these Percale bed sheets and the Giza Dream sheets are available for $29.98. You'll also get a 3-piece towel set for $19.98. Their towels are freaking amazing. I kid you not. I'm not saying that to blow smoke up your butt. I have their towels. They are my favorite towels. They actually absorb. These come with a 10-year warranty, 60-day money back guarantee. You cannot beat this offer with a bat. All right. So anyway, give them a call, 1-800-858-0263. Use my promo code Carl or go to mypillow.com. Click on the radio listener square. Take advantage of the deals. Okay, China. Is China coming? Is a Wuhan lab? Let me put it this way. Is a Wuhan lab coming to the United States? I'll be more specific. Is a Wuhan lab coming to Florida? Guys, I was given some very disturbing news from a friend of mine. I'll say someone that did some investigating for me, and I started looking into this, and I can't believe that this is something to be aware of. A Chinese company has pre-purchased farmland right here in the state of Florida for primate research and for breeding, and what could be a breeding and a quarantine facility right here in the state of Florida. I'm going to go through this. Honestly, I can't even believe what I'm reading. The company, I believe it's called Joinn Laboratories. I believe that's how it's pronounced. Joinn Laboratories. It's pretty disturbing. But anyway, I'm going to go through this, and I'm going to go through the China's tentacles are all in the United States. We already know about Fang Fang, right? Sleeping with Eric Swalwell, sleeping with a Chinese spy. We also know that Dianne Feinstein's driver, former senator or senator, she's still in the Senate. Anyway, her driver for 10 years was a Chinese spy. So we know the problem is big, especially in California politics and around California politicians. There's a large Asian community in the state of California, no doubt, specifically in Northern California. But I'm telling you, we need to be aware of what's happening with China. So let me just get into this. And I'm also going to talk to you about China has launched police stations in New York City. Election software. Here's another headline. Election software executive arrested for alleged personal ID theft, storing data in China. California DA is going after them, as well as another DA's office, I believe, in Michigan. So we'll get to that. But this is pretty crazy. There's a lot of things going on in the headlines, obviously. A lot of things to be concerned about. Things that I'll just, give me just a second for my computer to refresh here. I'll go through some of the headlines of the day because obviously there is a lot of important news out there. It's not going to slow down leading up to the elections, no doubt. But I do want to focus on this China story. So Biden looks to Russian allied communist Venezuela for oil production. You guys heard me talk about this last night on Officer Tatum's show. This is absolutely stupid when we have the resources that we need here. Obviously, Biden got dissed by Saudi Arabia. Why? Because they want to drive up prices. They want to make more money. And they realize that Biden is a weakling and he has put the United States in a very compromising position, not allowing these oil companies to do the necessarily drilling that they need to, and demonizing the big oil companies. It's doing major damage, and we're getting ready to feel the pain since OPEC is cut. We've already been feeling the pain, but we're going to feel that even worse. You guys may have heard that Senator Ben Sasse is expected to resign at the end of the year, take a job at Florida University. I'm at the University of Florida to head the University of Florida. I'm glad that Ben Sasse is leaving the Senate. He had some great ideas, but his hatred towards Trump was just overwhelming. It was annoying. It was time for him to go. I actually think it might be a good idea. We'll see what happens. I think it might be a good idea for him to go to the University of Florida because at least he is a conservative. Even though he was a Trump hater, at least he is a conservative. California doing more stupid stuff, making Californians eligible to receive $1,050 to quote, help address rising costs. Apparently, they don't understand that's going to cause more inflation out there. But here's sadly with California, I think close to or thereabouts 50% of their population is on welfare. So it's no big deal to them. People will see this as a bonus, not realizing that it's actually going to hurt them. Here's something that actually I want to get into at a later podcast. I'm going to debunk DACA. I'm going to save that for another podcast. But all the DACA myths that you've heard, I'm going to debunk them. But here's something. Latino voters flip on Democrats. This is getting very scary for Democrats, and they are going to continue to try to import more Democrats to change the demographics of the Latino vote. That's something that I'll share with you as well. I've got information on that. I won't share with you. I won't share that in this podcast, but I'm going to do a separate podcast addressing all of that. Because the Dems are flipping out, too, because the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals declares DACA unlawful. And, of course, it was. It didn't go through Congress. That started with President Obama, and then President Trump got rid of it with an executive order on his behalf. Biden pardons all federal offenses pertaining to possessions of marijuana. Unfortunately, they have to admit that there are no people in federal prison that are actually there for just a simple marijuana charge. But whatever Biden can do to pander to voters, because everything else sucks, that his policy sucked, he's going to be kissing a lot of booty in order to try to save some Democrat seats in the House and Senate. The federal agents believe, another headline, federal agents believe they have enough evidence to charge Hunter Biden with tax crimes, falsifying statements. Whoop-de-doo. We'll see what happens. Washington Post is reporting this, which I do find fascinating. Obviously, they seem to be ignoring the Tony Bobulinski story about the Biden crime family. So once Washington Post gets on that, I know that they're serious, but also I think I think Joe Biden's presidency is officially going to be over after the midterms, or technically is going to be over after the midterms. I believe Biden's presidency is going to be virtually anyway, officially over before Trump beats him in 2024. But if you see a potential candidate, if you see Hillary Clinton, if you see a Pete Buttigieg, if you see any of these people in his administration or in his party start talking about the Gavin Newsom, start talking about the Hunter Biden case, it means they're getting ready to kick Biden out on his duff. Squad member Cori Bush, in another headline, goes all in on defund the police movement. Thank God for stupid Democrats, even though I don't want them in Congress. Compton Carlotta, Cori Bush should not be in Congress, but she is, and she's doubling down on defund the police because she thinks that's her mission. She doesn't realize that she's a useful idiot for George Soros, and this is only going to help Republicans in the midterm. So Compton Carlotta, Cori Bush, please keep pressing. Defund the police. Here's a fascinating story. Trans defense, Seattle hacker gets probation due to mental health and transgender status. So this hacker that hacked Capital One Bank and ended up they had to pay $190 million in settlements with affected customers. And the Treasury Department fined the company an additional $80 million. The guy that did that thinks he's a woman, is getting off basically with probation because the judge doesn't want to sentence him. I believe it's a him. I don't know which way they're transitioning, but I believe it's a him pretending to be a her. So whatever. But anyway, this Judge Robert S. Lasnik, said sentencing former Amazon software engineer Paige Thompson, probably real name is Paul, to time in prison would have been particularly difficult on her because of her mental health and transgender status. I mean, just absolutely insane. So anyway, Capital One has to cough up $270 million because of this hacker. And this hacker gets probation because he thinks he's a girl or she thinks he's a guy. I'm not sure which biological sex they are. So anyway, that's in the news for the day. Now, let me get to this issue at hand. All right, China. What the hell is going on with China? Why aren't we paying more attention to China? I'm afraid China has their tentacles in absolutely everything. I am afraid that they are becoming the dominant country, and I think they will surpass the United States. I believe they've surpassed us in manufacturing. I have to double check that, but they've definitely surpassed us in when it comes to hypersonic military weapons. We'll get into that as well. But what the hell is this about? They may be building a primate lab, a research lab, a breeding and quarantine facility right here in Florida. Again, source of mine shared some of this information with me, and I couldn't believe it. And I've looked into the lab. So here's how the story goes. So there's a Chinese company that pre-purchased farmland right here in the state of Florida for primate research, a breeding and quarantine facility. It's 14 acres, was purchased first in 2020 for $675,000. All right. So 1,400 acres of land purchased in 2020 for $675,000. It was not purchased by the Chinese. It was purchased by, I believe, brothers Stephen and Justin Lamb. It's in Levy County. I won't read you the specific address, but it's in Levy County. The land was used for cattle and is zoned for rural properties and forestry. That's what it's currently zoned for. So China came in and said to the two ranchers that they would like to buy the land, and they offered them 8 times what they had paid for it. Now, mind you, they paid, again, $675,000 in 2020. Well, China came in and offered them $5.5 million. Gabe, would you be tempted to take that with, if less than 2 years, you made an 800% profit? Oh my God. Oh my God. That would be tempting, wouldn't it? All right, so the company is called Joinn Laboratories. I encourage you to look into this. Joinn Laboratories, and it has strong ties to the Chinese military, and they create bioweapons. So the Lambs, which are the brothers, the ranchers that took the offer, again, the land is not zoned for research or use of primates. It was zoned or is zoned for rural properties and forestry. But here's the concern. Here's what my source shared with me. A woman by the name of Stacy Hectus. She is the county's planning and zoning director, and said this is a compatibility and spot zoning issue that doesn't align with the plans for the future. And so the research lab doesn't align with the plans for the future. However, Joinn Laboratories wants to have the land rezoned. While Ms. Hector said they can't do it now, what she didn't do is rule out that they couldn't try spot zoning or filing with the county to have it changed. So anything over 50 acres in Levy County must get approval by the state. So they already paid $5.5 million. We know the Chinese Communist Party did, or this lab, which, let's face it, is, if they're working with China, they're associated with the Chinese Communist Party. So they paid $5.5 million. How much more are they willing to pay to try to bribe some county commissioners? You don't think that'll happen? You know, they do it all the time. I mean, just keep in mind the NIH, the research that they've done with beagles and monkeys, torturing them. I mean, it's absolutely insane. So my fear is, how is this happening in the United States? How is this happening in Florida? I argue that we have the greatest governor of all time. So I'm going to have to look into this deeply. I'm going to have to research, do a little more research. I'm going to, whatever information I come up with, I'm going to share it with whomever I can, up the chain of command, if you will. But this is very, very disturbing. I mean, it is quite possible that that a new Wuhan lab could be coming to a county near you. And right now it's in Florida. I briefly looked up some of the things that this lab, okay, so here's some things that the lab makes. Joinn Laboratories a China company, says right here, LTD operates as a medicines development company. The company offers drug development, pharmaceutical analysis, pharmacological testing, and other related services. Joinn Laboratories, China company, also provides pesticide and medical device safety evaluation services. Oh, isn't that nice? That was right on Forbes. So they admit that this is a China company. And again, they may be looking to do research on primates, like they were doing in the Wuhan lab. This is, China's tentacles inside of the United States are absolutely, it's baffling to me. Like, how the hell can we allow our country to be overtaken by the Chinese? I don't even think they're subtle about it anymore. How is it that China can buy an inch of land in the United States at all, or any China associated company? Can we do that in China? Of course we cannot. God, I'm so tired of being such a damn dumb country. This is insane. This is national suicide. It really is. Listen to this. China launches a police station in New York City. This had to just the news. The People's Republic of China has established an, quote, overseas police service station, close quote, in New York City to monitor Chinese nationals in the U.S. This according to a human rights group. The watchdog group called Safeguard Defenders asserted that Beijing had established 110 overseas stations to monitor its citizens abroad. This, according to the New York Post. A total of 54, or approximately half of those stations, exist inside of Europe. Ostensibly, these facilities were largely created, Just the News reports, to handle administrative issues for Chinese citizens while outside of the country. So it sounds like it's kind of a consulate of some sort of embassy of sorts, but I think it's more. The report also noted that the Chinese authorities had induced 230,000 Chinese nationals to voluntarily, quote unquote, return to the country and face criminal proceedings. To voluntarily return to the country and face criminal proceedings. Is it possible? That China has a bunch of nationals out here in the United States doing dirt for them? They would ask them to voluntarily return on the basis of, there's some criminal proceedings against them, and all they do is just go back home and give to China the dirt that they want and the dirt that they need. They report to the Chinese Communist Party, or perhaps it may be not even of their own free will. Like, hey, China's watching you. We've got people everywhere. I mean, we're even possibly going to build a new Wuhan lab in Florida. We've got, we had a driver driving for Senator Dianne Feinstein for 10 years. And by God, we had a prostitute sleeping with a spy sleeping with what's his name? Eric Swalwell for, forever. So, we've got our tentacles literally everywhere inside of the United States, including in academia, including in our universities system. I mean, this is terrifying to me. I don't understand why we don't understand the Chinese threat. We have all these woke social justice warriors that want to constantly bash the West. They have no freaking idea what it means to live under the Chinese Communist Party in a complete and utter surveillance state. They don't understand communism. People like LeBron James can brush it off because he's a superstar. He goes to China and they'll kiss his behind. But if he were to be born and raised in China, he wouldn't be LeBron James. Absolutely amazing what's going on. Now, in another Just the News article, election software executive arrested for alleged personal ID theft storing data in China. All right, so an executive with a Michigan-based company whose software was used in managing Los Angeles County election poll workers has been arrested as part of an investigation into the possible theft of their personal identity. This according to the county district attorney. Konish Corporation or Connect Corporation CEO, a guy by the name of Eugene Yu, was taken into custody Tuesday by members of the District Attorney's Office Bureau of Investigation on suspicion of theft of personal identifying information. They were assisted in part by the Meridian Township Police Department in Michigan. Should have known, because there's no way Gascon, the DA of Los Angeles, is going to bring a case against this guy. You should have known that it started in Michigan. Authorities in taking you into custody in Michigan also seized hard drives and other digital evidence. This according to George Gascon, the DA in Los Angeles, the guy that's allowing crime to just surge in Los Angeles. Anyway, here's what Gascon said. When we entrust a company to hold our confidential data, they must be willing and able to protect our personal identifying information from theft, Gascon said. Otherwise, we are all victims. So Yu has reportedly been the focus of those who have raised concerns about voting fraud, particularly in the 2020 elections. How much do you want to bet that Connect Corporation CEO Eugene Yu reports to China? How much do you want to bet? The office said the Yu investigation is concerned solely with the personal identifying information of election workers. China wants to pay off election workers, maybe? The alleged conduct had no impact on the tabulation of votes and did not alter election results, but security in all aspects of any election is essential so that we all have full faith in the integrity of the election progress. This according to the office. How the hell would they know? Please shut up. Don't go too far. Just arrest the guy and let us do the speculating, all right? Connect distributes and sells its proprietary poll chief software, an election worker management system that was used by the county in the last California election. The software assists with poll worker assignments, communications, and payroll. Wow. Poll chief requires that workers submit personal identifying information that is retained by the Connect. All right. Under its $2.9 million 5-year contract with the county, Connect was supposed to securely maintain the data and ensure that only U.S. citizens and permanent residents have access to it. So permanent residents, U.S. citizens and permanent residents, meaning non-U.S. citizens that happen to live here forever. District Attorney Office investigators found that information was stored on servers in the Public Republic of China in apparent violation of the contract. The office is seeking Yu's extradition to Los Angeles. Oh, God, where he's going to get off scot-free. This is good God, man. We are just being infused. And again, I cannot believe this, that we may be looking at China opening up a Wuhan-style facility in Levy County, one of the counties hardest hit by Hurricane Ian. Obviously, I hope that there's more to this story that perhaps I'm not aware of. I am going to dig deeper into this, but suffice it to say, listen, one of the things that I learned during this election cycle is I mediated a debate between county commissioners debate right here in the Central Florida area. I learned so much that I didn't know. I did not understand fully how much power county commissioners have, the large responsibilities that they have. When it comes to zoning and all of this stuff with property, it's amazing. I mean, even when it comes to your 2A rights, they can have a large impact on that as well. So make sure that if you're not up on who's running for your county commission races, I guarantee you they have, in some cases, not necessarily more power, but they can influence your life in ways like that you can't imagine, more so than a mayor can at some point. And it's absolutely fascinating to me. So make sure you're up on who your county commissioners are. If you live in Levy County and you happen to hear this podcast, be well aware. Ask Stacy Hectus. She's the county's planning and zoning director. Give her a call. Perhaps I need to look into her and give her a call as well. And maybe we'll reach out to her and see if we can find out more about this. But this is absolutely terrifying if this is indeed the case. And it appears to be the case. I trust my source. But 14 acres of land purchased originally by these brothers that were ranchers, Stephen and Justin Lobb, only to be bought out in less than a couple of years later, or fewer than a couple of years later, for 8 times the amount. Joinn Laboratories, this Chinese company that does that works with the Chinese military, and that creates bioweapons, and they're going to be doing research on primates here and breeding them, and have a quarantine facility here in the U.S., here in the state of Florida. Now, also, just real quick, I want to go through these. I read this column, and I really want to get this guy on. We've reached out to him, unfortunately, to no avail, but hopefully we will be able to get a hold of him. He wrote a column for the American Mind, and I won't go through all of it, but it's entitled "The 5 Myths About China." The guy's name is David P. Goldman. And I won't go through the entire column, but he talks about how we arrived at this digital age, where we are now with the digital age, and how much of that has to do with the Cold War, and things that developed after the Cold War, research that we developed or funded, the DoD funded after the Cold War, when we were spending 1% of our GDP. Now we're only spending 0.3% of GDP for research and development and on our military, which absolutely sucks, which ensures that China is on the rise. But he talks about the strength of Russia in the past and their military, and how it didn't seem like we could overcome that. And then we did. We worked with the Israelis, and we did overcome that. But now we are trailing China in many things, including militarily. But he talks about the dangerous mythologies that we have as Americans, and how naive. So here's some of the things. He says, right now, we are laboring under 5 myths about China that could get a lot of us killed. Myth number 1, America is making China rich and can weaken it by reducing imports, investment, and so forth. Okay, here's what he has to say. China's exports to the U.S. fell to 2%. So China's exports to us fell to 2% of its GDP, their gross domestic product, in 2021, from 9% in 2025. That's a huge cut, right? So nonetheless, he says, the absolute level of Chinese exports to the U.S. has jumped by 50% since the Trump tariffs went into effect in August of 2019. So $6 trillion of stimulus bought Chinese rather than American goods, because our creaky supply chains can't meet a surge in the demand. Honestly, this has a lot to do with the pandemic. And we've not built up our infrastructure here. It's absolutely insane to me. China has $1 trillion trade surplus, which means it exports capital. We have a $1.4 trillion trade deficit, which means we import capital. All right, let me read that again. China has $1 trillion trade surplus, all right, which means it exports their capital. We have a $1.4 trillion deficit, which means we import their capital, basically. In fact, we have imported a net 18 trillion of capital in the past 30 years to cover our deficits, stopping Americans from investing in China, he says. So he says stopping Americans from investing in China is a waste of time. Myth number 2, China depends on stolen American technology. And they do steal a lot of American technology. But do they depend on it now? Not so much. They're not a developing nation, and we keep treating them as if they are. He says here, under myth number 2, China didn't steal U.S. know-how to build a hypersonic missile that can circle the globe and hit its target, because we don't know how to do that. Think about that. China buys and steals plenty of technology from the West, no doubt, but China leads in key high-tech fields, notably including broadband communications. China now graduates, listen to this. I've talked about this before when I've sat in for other people. China now graduates 7 times as many engineers and scientists as we do each year. Think about that. China graduates 7 times as many engineers. as we do in the United States. And the engineers that we do graduate, we're trying to make sure that they're woke. Instead of just focusing on mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, whatever it may be, whatever, field within engineering or they might go into, we want to make sure that they're indoctrinated with left-wing jargon. And we're doing this to our kids as well. So a lot of our kids are going to grow up to be dumb as hell and social justice warriors, but they're not going to learn how to fight against China, how to defend our country against China. They're not going to know how to advance in this digital age. They're really not. Guys, American greatness is coming to a screeching halt. That's why when Trump says make America great again, it's really an apt statement. He goes on to say, like I said, China graduates 7 times as many engineers and scientists as we do each year. According to the U.S. News, and I'm sorry I have to read this, but it was just too much for me to remember. But according to the U.S. News, 2021 rankings, China has 21 of the world's 50 best engineering programs. Oh my God. Honestly, I didn't know that. 2021 rankings, China has 21 of the world's 50 best engineering programs. When we think of China, we think of cheap built crap like we see in Walmart. But when it comes to their military technology, they're on the march. They are on the march. And don't forget, Joe Biden gave them over $80 billion of equipment. Well, he gave it to Afghanistan. You don't think China has gotten some of that that technology, that machinery to reverse engineer it? Or works for big tech. He talks about our engineers. They work for big tech companies that won't work for the Pentagon. By some measures, the quality as well as the quantity of China's scientific output surpasses ours. So we've got to incentivize some of our engineers to work for the Pentagon. Stop making these people woke and pay them more. Some of the engineers at Lockheed Martin, for example, probably won't get as paid much as someone that works for Microsoft or Apple of the sort. Well, maybe that's an investment we need to consider. As long as they're not woke. We need to make sure that we stay ahead of the game, ahead of China. And right now, militarily, we're falling behind. Now, this may, Carl, we're not. Listen, you're going to be concerned when China can treat you the way that they treat their citizens, when they can lock you up. We think of the lockdowns here, right? It was basically shaming by our peers. The Chinese Communist Party were locking people in their homes, killing their pets, and if they came out, they were jailed. I mean, we haven't seen anything yet. Is this what we really want to live under as Americans? He says here that we poured $6 trillion down the drain in forever wars and let our industries atrophy. We did this to ourselves, and it's time that we faced up to our own failures instead of looking for someone to blame. Myth number 3, China faces demographic collapse. We look to this, right? Because we're like, they're China one-child policy, which they no longer have, by the way. They're encouraging some of their families to get their freak on China because they realize that this is a major problem. But nonetheless, it's one of the things that we say, listen, China has a demographic problem. Well, so do we. We're telling all our kids that girls can be boys and boys can be girls so that they won't have a family together. We're demonizing what it means to be a traditional family, man, woman, child. And so I forget what it's called. The rate in which we need to reproduce people has fallen significantly. The whole again, myth number 3, China faces demographic collapse. The whole industrial world faces demographic decline. Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan are worse off than China. With only 1 child per female, Taiwan's working age population, listen to this, Taiwan's working age population will fall from 16 million. This is their working age population. So, their labor force participation rate, right, if you will. So their working age population will fall from 16 million people in Taiwan to 5 million in the course of 1 century. Taiwan's status will be resolved by self-shrinkage, he says. South Korea is disappearing even faster. South Korea, our ally right now, North Korea, obviously they're in pretty bad shape, but China isn't. So South Korea is disappearing even faster, which makes reunification with North Korea likely by mid-century. They'll simply have to because they're not having children. Man, I mean, this stuff is just scary. You don't think China is on the march. They're not going to be deterred. They're not going to be deterred, except for someone that loves America, a leader that loves America. There are two possible remedies for a declining workforce, he says. Import young workers or export capital to where young workers live. So China's Belt and Road Initiative plans to assimilate more than 1 billion people from the global south into China's economic sphere. Man, Sino-forming of the global south is in full swing. That's what it's called. So again, China's Belt and Road Initiative plans to assimilate more than 1 billion people from the global south, into China's economic sphere. That includes Taiwan, right? Sino-forcing of the global south is in full swing. China's exports to the global south nearly doubled in the past 2 years and are twice its exports to the U.S. For example, Huawei, he says here, is building Indonesia's broadband system and training 10,000 officials in cybersecurity. China is assimilating Southeast Asia into its economy through high-speed rail. BRI has many failures, but what should frighten us is China's success, he says. We have 750 foreign bases. China has exactly one. God almighty. We have 750 foreign bases. China has exactly one. And they're spreading, essentially, I mean, their Belt and Roads Initiative feels like capitalism, right? Except it's not. It's communism disguised as capitalism as they take over your society, rob your minerals, rob your goods, control you. We imagine that China wants to spend trillions to project military power around the world because we think China is as stupid as we are, right? We want to make the world safe for democracy. China wants to control the economic life of billions, and that's what they figure. If they can control the economic life of billions, they'll eventually beat out the West. They'll eventually beat out the United States of America. And let's face it, our European allies are a bunch of pansies. All right, let's just be real. Thank God for these new ladies that are in office in the UK, Truss and good Lord, right now the lady's name in Italy that just got elected slips me. But man, I love her. God forgive me. But her name slips me right now. Myth number 4, China wants to take over Taiwan. So China wants to take over Taiwan because it is led by an expansionist Marxist-Leninist party that hates and fears democracy. So that's the myth. Number 4, China wants to take over Taiwan because it is led by an expansionist Marxist-Leninist party that hates and fears democracy. So he says here, China is Marxist in the same way that the mafia is Catholic. They take such things seriously, but ruthless pragmatism guides their actions. The territorial integrity of China is a raison d'etat of any Chinese regime, communist or otherwise. China is not a nation state, but what he calls a polyglot empire that has broken apart countless times in its history, almost always as a result of foreign intervention. A breakaway province is an existential threat to the integrity of this or any other Chinese state. Some of our hawks think we should promote the disintegration of China, and Chinese suspicions about our intentions cannot be exaggerated. Have no illusions, he says. China will go to war over Taiwan. They will go to war over Taiwan because they look at that as us breaking up their territory. They're going to go to war. And guys, I hate to tell you this. They'd win. They'd win. The more that I read up on this, the more that I'm really concerned about this, especially with this Biden administration in the White House. Why wouldn't you take advantage of Biden's weakness? Why wouldn't you do it? If you're another country, see, here's the failure of the United States, especially when it comes to the leftists, and even I would say the well-meaning Democrats and liberals that are here. They assume that the rest of the world thinks like us, and they don't. They assume that we can be nice to certain people, or what they would consider nice, the left would consider nice. And they'll just, oh, man, these people in America, they're so nice. These Democrats, these lefties. No, they don't think like us. They're like, yeah, we actually want to dominate you, and we'll smile in your face and we'll do business with you. And once we get you hooked to our products and our business and all that kind of stuff, we're just going to take over. Slowly but surely, we're going to take over. That's exactly what China is doing. And they see Taiwan, us trying to protect Taiwan, they see that as a threat. And they will not take it lightly. They will not take it lightly. They can't have a breakaway province. As they said, to them, it's an existential threat. No breakaway provinces. No Hong Kongs. Hong Kong is, right? Hong Kong is gone. By the same token, China will accept an indefinite continuation of Taiwan's status quo to avoid the risk and high cost of war. At best, a U.S.-Chinese war would trigger a global economic collapse and threaten the CPC's mandate in China. So they are concerned for that reason. All right, but listen, we can't. We're not going to win. We're not going to win. Not the United States that we are today. Myth number 5, we can deter China by shifting military forces to Asia and adding conventional capabilities. All right, so we all believe this. I've read stories about this. I got to have this guy on because there's so many questions that I want to ask. The America of 1973 couldn't beat the Soviet Union, he says, but America turned itself into a different country by 1982. Can you say, Reagan? To meet the Chinese challenge, we must reinvent ourselves again. Unless we think in trillions, not billions, we are wasting our time. So we have 5 cats to bail, he says. We need to fund federal research and development at the Reagan level. That is an additional 1% of GDP, or roughly $2 trillion over 10 years. He says we need a radical revision of tax and regulatory policy to favor capital-intensive manufacturing. He also says we need selective subsidies for mission critical industries. We need to shift an educational priorities toward engineering and hard science. That woke this crap has got to go. We need that was me adding that on there, adding my 2 cents. We need to shift defense priorities away from legacy systems toward innovation, including space-based missile defense. That's why Trump created the Space Force. Hate the name, but love the mission. Defense, energy, weapons, cyber war, and drone swarms. Man, he says, I can't be specific about our path back to technological leadership. In 1973, no one knew that CMOS chip manufacturing would put look-down radar into F-15s by 1978. We unleashed American creativity and entrepreneurship and reinvented both military and civilian technology. Innovation, he says, is our great advantage over China. We require the courage to rely on it. Oh, and also, by the way, one of the things that he mentioned earlier about Taiwan and whether or not China could take Taiwan, and easily so, you understand that. Listen to this. CSIS held a recent war game on U.S.-China war over Taiwan. Let me just read it. In the core scenario, the U.S. loses 2 carriers and 700 planes, while China loses 150 ships, he says. But the game contains assumptions that Chinese analysts ridicule. For example, the presence of a Marine littoral regiment on Taiwan to fight Chinese invaders, unless they go as tourists. He says Marines will never make it to Taiwan. Check out the map. He's right. An attempt to move U.S. troops to the island in combat relevant strength would trigger preemption by China. He said, so what's a so-called porcupine weapons buildup in Taiwan? That is the sleepwalker scenario, of which Admiral James Servetus and others have warned, by reference to the outbreak of the First World War. If one side mobilizes, the other has no choice but to preempt, and war becomes inevitable. It is fanciful, he says, to expect Beijing to sit on its hands while we raise the cost of reunification, but it's not going to happen. There's another part that I was trying to get to. I don't see it here, but basically he explained that another issue that we have with Taiwan, you have to understand this, they've been avoiding building up their own military. And so we think we're just going to go in there and give them weapons, which is what I said. hey, we should do. And they're going to be able to fight against China. They're going to be able to fight against the mainland. They can't even find soldiers willing to fly their F-15s in Taiwan. Their military, people don't even want to stay in their military for more than 4 months. Not 4 years, 4 months. Man, the China threat is real. The China threat is real. From literally looking to build a freaking Wuhan-style lab right in the United States, in Florida. We see the election software executive that was arrested. China launching police stations inside of New York City within the United States in 5 myths. We think we're the big dog in the United States of America. I'm afraid China is slowly but surely becoming that big dog. I hate to admit it. I hate to say it. But this is where we find ourselves. This is where we find ourselves. And we can... it's just so frustrating. It's so frustrating to think about. But I'm going to look more into this lab. I'm going to find out more. I'm going to report back to you. I'm going to try to get a hold of this lady, Stacey Hectus. I'm going to see whom else I can share this information with, and try to find out more about this lab and what the heck we can do to make sure that China never buys land. And honestly, I don't care if it's our ally. I don't care if it's Canada. I don't care if it's Mexico. I don't care. No nation should be able to buy property inside of the United States. God, I just feel like we're becoming the dumbest nation on the planet, once the greatest nation on the planet. Anyway, listen, I appreciate you tuning in. You can hear my frustration, obviously. Dang, I hate watching us just collapse. There's too many good Americans that love this nation to watch us collapse. Thank God we have November 8th coming. That's a start, right? That's a start. We've got to stop this weakening of our dollar. We've got to stop this cultural Marxism, corporate Marxism, all known as wokeism, if you will. We got to stop all of this nonsense. We've got to halt the spending. Republicans have spent like drunken sailors. Or drunken politicians worse than drunken sailors, in my opinion. They spent like drunken politicians as well. So we've got to make sure that this spending stops. Our dollar cannot be weakened right now. And we have to rebuild our military, and it can't be a woke military. We got to fire all of these top level generals that are in there now, making our military woke. The Millies, the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, all of these people have to go. They are destroying the United States by making our military weak. Strength or peace through strength. That's what Reagan believed in. That's what Trump believed in. Peace through strength. You promote strength, the world looks at you and like, I don't want to mess with that guy. I'll work with him. I don't want to mess with him. That's what we want. All right, guys, I appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Please don't forget to support MyPillow, Mike Lindell and MyPillow. Great patriot, selling great products to help all of us get better, help all of us get better sleep. Please don't forget to take advantage of that of those specials with the Percale sheets, the Giza Dream sheets, and also the towels that are available for only $19.98. All you have to do is go to mypillow.com, click on that radio listener square, enter the promo code Carl, or give them a call. Wait at 1-800-858-0263, 1-800-858-0263. Really do appreciate you guys. Subscribe to the podcast, thecarljacksonshow.com. Social media, The Carl Jackson Show. That is The Carl Jackson Show. Until next time, don't grow weary doing good. God bless you.